Orla leads the delivery of regional economic projects and policies that facilitate enterprise growth and job creation, managing projects across the spectrum from strategic, game-changer, visionary ideologies to the 160 actions to be delivered across over 40 stakeholder bodies.
Good morning and thank you very much. No tall order. I think I might have overdone it on my bio there. I really talked myself up very well. I think thinking about what Rita said there in terms of maybe people falling asleep, they might have put The Economist up first to make sure I didn't get you in the afternoon. So look, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here today and to share the room with such talented women. And thank you to the Leos across Limerick, Clare and Tipperary for hosting such a collaborative event. So I suppose I'm an economist, I'll put that one out there. And we kind of sometimes get a bit of a bad rap. We kind of tend to overcomplicate what are very simple ideologies. We kind of tend to predict there's definitely going to be a boom, there's definitely going to be a bust, and if we keep predicting something, sure, one of them is always going to be right. For those of you who don't know, I'm not sure, do you know why God created economists in the first place? Someone had to make weather forecasters look good, right? Oh, phew, I was thinking, well, they're going to get the joke. So look, currently for my day job, as Sienna said, I manage what is a business, enterprise and innovation department action plan for jobs for the Midwest region. The government launched it in 2015, and at the time we were really in less favourable economic conditions. We had much higher rates of unemployment, and at the time Minister Bruton was the minister. And the ambition of the plan was to create 23,000 jobs in the Midwest region by 2020. And I remember thinking, this guy is bonkers, and he definitely thinks he's not going to be in government by the time 2020 comes because we can't hold him to account for where's the 23,000 jobs. But I was wrong, which is amazing for an economist. But we are 17,000 jobs more now than when the plan was launched. We're 75% towards the ultimate target, and we're 2 years into a 5-year plan. So there is definitely growth in this region, and it's been felt, you know, we look at a very unstable geopolitical environment at the moment, but we have very much seen a bounce back in terms of the local economy here. My job does put me in a unique position. I'm looking at global growth markets and where the growth are and what can we do to deliver that blue sky thinking into projects that could deliver opportunity for the region. So I could absolutely bore ye probably, or like confuse ye talking about, I don't know, the growth in VR or AR or AI, and that's not artificial insemination into cows, or Industry 4.0 or the Internet of Things, and etc., and go, oh, where is this all going? Because in reality, I suppose at the moment, the iPhone just recently celebrated its 10th anniversary. It's only 10 years old. 2/3 of the children who are currently in primary school are going to enter into careers that don't even exist at the moment. 5 years ago, we didn't have things like data analysts and big data, and they're the key shortages at the moment. So the pace of technological disruption that we have at the moment makes us, even though I'm an economist and we like to predict things, it's a shot in the dark because there is just such a pace of disruption, particularly driven by technology. And like, just to give you an idea, like IoT now at the moment can allow predictive maintenance on machines, so you know before the machine even goes down that it's going to go down. Or companies globally have patents on businesses that now ship product to us ever before we've even ordered it. So they've got algorithms down to a T. They know what we want even before we know it. So predictability in the marketplace is really difficult at the moment. But there are things that we know with certainty. And so this morning I'm going to try and focus on what is probably accepted as the greatest disruptive global growth market in the world, and that's women. As the Secretary General Angel Guerra said in the OECD, he's Secretary General of the OECD, which is like this, for those of you who don't know, it's like a global kind of body, could do a lot of economic stuff. But he's identified women as the most underutilised economic asset in the world. And in reality, in today's business environment globally, and what has been really felt here in the Midwest region is as well, is there is a global war for talent. And like any other commodity or trend, it comes down to that beautiful thing in economics, which is actually what economics is about. It's about supply and demand. And the demand for people now, particularly in certain sectors, outstrips the supply. But as one of this woman, Teresa Whitmarsh, she's an exec director in the Washington State Investment Bank. You know, the narrative on the war on talent is huge, but she's quoted as saying, and I'll quote her, "If you exclude 50% of the talent pool, it's no wonder you find yourself in a war for talent." So let's just look at the simple economics, I suppose, of supply and demand and take it out of people for a minute. So if we take an Ed Sheeran concert, for example, in Croke Park, he issues 80,000 tickets. You can't put 80,000 plus one person in. It's 80,000 people. There's a fixed supply of tickets in that instance. But more than 80,000 people want to go to the concert. So demand outstrips supply and supply is fixed. And in those instances, you will always see an increase in price. So that's why you have a black market and the price of tickets go up. And that's not economic theory, that's a reality. That's the Dublin housing market at the moment. The supply is fixed and demand outstrips supply. The only way you can kind of quell that real demand push, where we would call it in economics, I'll try and get in a few economics things, demand push, where the price is being pushed up because of demand. The only way you can kind of calm that type of pressure is to increase the supply. So Ed Sheeran in this example could issue a second date in Croke Park. Let's pretend he's not playing in everywhere in Ireland other than the Midwest in this instance. He's just playing a gig in Croke Park. He announces a second date. Voila, there's another 80,000 tickets on the market. And we would say in economics what he's done is shifted the supply curve to the right. So there's fundamental increase in the supply of tickets in that instance. Now if we bring that back to work and talent, at the moment, women like yourselves, agencies like the Leos, Enterprise Ireland, the IDA are all doing an amazing job at creating new opportunities. But for that to be felt as an economic reality and for economic growth to really come from that, we need people in those roles, we need those jobs to be filled. If we go back to our Ed Sheeran analogy, let's say he couldn't get the second date in Croke Park. They did a Garth Brooks on it. It was like one night only. Well, I know he had a few more, but anyway, let's say Croke Park residents said no more, just one night. What would happen is the price of the tickets would just go up and up and up. Particularly, this would be black market activity in the concert case. But after a certain price, actually people would go, I'm not willing to spend €1,000 on an Ed Sheeran ticket and spend €1,000 on an overpriced hotel room in Dublin. I'm not going. And so where we have fixed supply, at a certain point we stop demanding. We look elsewhere. So you might, instead of going to Dublin, say, God, I can get a direct flight out of Shannon, I'm going to go to Berlin. He's actually playing in Berlin. I'm going to pick up a ticket there, get a city mini break, all for the same price as half the hotel room in Dublin for the night. So you move and you look elsewhere when the price becomes what you're not comfortable with. And in the labour market in the Midwest at the moment, we're in a situation where the demand for talent is much greater than the supply of people. And the price of people is going up. You can see that now. You can see unions kind of moving back into a situation where they're back into negotiations and looking for pay increases. And wages are going up. The price of labour is wages. And if wages keep going up, Ireland becomes, and the Midwest in it, becomes a less attractive place to do business. And what we don't want is businesses going on that mini break elsewhere. We want them to stay here. And so our supply line of talent is critical in ensuring that we have economic development and growth for the region. But we need the supply of talent to increase. And we're not Ed Sheeran. We can't just decide, oh, I'll have a second gig. We can't just create another great supply line of people. We have the shortage now. The people we need haven't been born. They have to go through nappies, preschool, primary school, secondary school, go straight to the labour market, do an apprenticeship, go to college, whatever it is they want to do. So if we had a baby boom now, we might be in a position to sort the current labour shortage out in 20 years' time, which doesn't really leave us with much growth in the intervening period. So where are we going to get these people from? And the answer is actually right here. In the Midwest alone at the moment, there's over 30,000 people who are not in the labour market. To be in the labour market, you have to be in employment, actively seeking employment. And 95% of those, actually it's 29,353 women on Census Night 2016, classified their primary role as looking after the home or the family. Now, if I go back to my day job and we're looking for an additional 23,000 jobs, we're 17,000 down, unemployment figures are going down, we're moving what we call in economics towards full employment. Because full employment is like, there's always going to be a level of movement. There's always going to be a certain percentage unemployed. The agencies and the entrepreneurs are doing great work, but what are we going to do to actually deliver on that? And so a real focus of mine at the moment is how can we provide greater labour market choices and opportunities for women. If we could create programmes that would even transition or create greater choice for 5% of those women, that's an additional 1,500 women in employment in the Midwest region alone. But what's the likelihood of that happening? The likelihood is actually very, very complex, because back to that beautiful economics concept of supply and demand, we all have our own individual supply and demand curves. And one thing is sure is our supply curve is fixed. We've got 24 hours in a day, 365 days a year. But the demands are complex and massive, and if it's a small baby, if it's a moody teenager, if it's elderly parents, if it's your phone going off 24/7 because you now can get emails all of the time, you have to do the housework, you have to try and cook a dinner, you have to do a bit of ironing, you might try and meet your friends on some occasions, you might like to read a book. The demands on our time are colossal. And really what we in economics would try and always look at is where is the equilibrium or the balance point between your supply and your demand. And for each woman that's very individual, and it's her choice in terms of how much time do I want to give A, B or C, and how do I balance all of those, what are opposing but very complementary demands. So, like I have a 5-year-old, I just have the little one guy, and he started primary school last month. So, in reality, his demands on my time are fundamentally changed now than they were when he was a baby. And my willingness to supply as much time to him as I did when he was a baby have changed. And so I've changed in how much time I'm willing to supply to work. And we all go through those transitions constantly. I went part-time when I actually gave up work, and then they offered me part-time and I took it. But I was really lucky. My employer gave me a part-time opportunity, and I was very fortunate to be able to afford to be able to do that as well. So each one of us in terms of our individual supply and demand are very unique, and it's our own decision on how we balance that. But the reality is that women spend 4 times more of their time on care duties than men. And we spend twice as much on household work than men. And that's irrelevant of employment status. The participation rate of women in the labour force falls by 20%, up to 20% when a woman has a child of preschool age. And it falls by up to 9% when the children are aged 5 to 12. So a drop of 20% and then a drop of 9%. Men's participation rate does not change, irrelevant of if there are children, there aren't children, or there's 10 children. It doesn't change. And so care work is realistically falling as a responsibility to women, and that is becoming a barrier to women's economic development. And if governments and companies want to see women reach their potential, they play a role in helping to provide that choice. And the data would really show that, like OECD countries, if we look at their averages, countries which have the highest spending on early education and childcare as a percentage of GDP have a higher labour force participation rate of women. And so my background is policies, and so I'll go nerdy in for a while, but like policies play a huge role in allowing the framework and the environment to facilitate choice. And I call it choice because it's up to us individually how much time we want to give of ourselves to all of these various competing demands. At the moment, in my opinion, the Irish government policies are at the moment showing a real lack of focus in facilitating economic potential of women. OECD data shows that Ireland has the highest childcare costs in the EU. And on average across the EU, your childcare costs are about 12% of your net income. In Ireland, it's 35%. And so while we got an €80 boost, I think there I'm out of childcare, but there was an €80 subsidy announced there at the start of this year, I think. That is, you know, it just isn't, it's mediocre at best in terms of the bills that run into thousands per month. And I feel also the government hasn't really got its head around how it will plan or facilitate and put policies in place towards the need for elderly care, because it's falling again on women. I do believe businesses also need to play a role, though, in facilitating a need for change in how their demand curve actually is at the moment. So they demand people in an employment situation 39 hours a week, 365 days a year, less your annual leave. That's what we offer. Are you willing to take it? And there needs to be greater choice and flexibility and more of an agile model that can fit with the needs of what women are willing to supply in terms of their time into employment. I think it's a win-win for businesses anyway, because they're getting access to what is an untapped talent pool at the moment. Ultimately, the value a woman places on all of these opposing and multiple demands is up to her in terms of her equilibrium point, and it's completely individual. But there has to be choice. And my ambition during the period of time that I'm in this role is to achieve some change and to provide a wider variety of choice and options for women. Because if the region is to realise its economic potential, then the supply of labour needs to increase. And we have a kitty of talented women in the region who I believe aren't being given the choice at the moment. Women are the next global emerging market. Our economic power is revolutionary and it represents the largest market opportunity in the world at the moment. If you just look at the numbers, women control about $20 trillion worth in annual consumer spending, and that figure is set to rise up to 28 trillion in the next 5 years. On aggregate, women represent a growth market that is bigger than China and India combined. It's actually twice as big. Our 13 trillion euro or dollar yearly earnings are set to reach 18 trillion in the next 5 years. Women own about a third of the businesses in the world, and our power and influence extends beyond what have been the traditional roles of family and education and extend into business, government and the environment. So let's do more with our economic power. Thank you.